Okay, we're going to crank it up here for the home stretch tonight. So we have Taya is available to help, if you want to, some study assistance for the final exam. And then Angina also be available over here. She did very well on the test, and just her brain clicked the way I want it to, so she could also maybe help you put together a study guide or whatever. Just because, so there's help out there, and unfortunately, I just don't think I can do too much of that myself. Okay, so we're going to finish this out here. So I've got a definition here that I'm going to ask you to learn. Oh, shucks, this is a long one. Okay, I'll write it down. And I am not saying this is the official GGWO definition of affiliation, because we do not have one. I'm saying it's one that we're putting out there for this course. This is Pastor Taggart, the best formulation he can come up with. And time will tell if this stands or if this gets cast by the wayside in favor of some other formulation. But we're going to put it out there. So, affiliation is a relationship. Isn't that good? It's not a contract, it's a relationship of fellowship and cooperation between like-minded churches. You'll love this. Voluntarily entered into for mutual spiritual benefit often characterized by a church. I'm laughing. Is Tom telling the jokes and Jamie's doing the laughing over there? Is that what's going on? By a church maintaining a relationship with its founder and or a pastor maintaining a relationship with those, and I'm going to have to go to a new page when you're ready. maybe we can come up with something better than this next time I teach this course. Okay, here we go. Can I switch pages? Okay. Okay, and a pastor maintaining a relationship with those, who trained and commissioned him. Okay? Now, I'm not going to do it, but I could give you an assignment to critique that if you think that's a good definition or if you want to add to it. Okay, so here we go. We're going to get, in the next 22 minutes, you know what? We're going to bleed over into next week because I'm not going to finish it tonight because I want to do this justice. First thing I wanted to say, just to make sure I squeeze it in, is that I've given a picture of affiliation that is non-governmental. My understanding is that in certain countries in Africa, and maybe also in Hungary too, where government is just very interested in churches, that it's not easy to set up a church, and that the government wants to know that a church is under the umbrella of a national organization. Is that somewhat accurate? Pastor Ben, are you following? No? Not in Ghana? So they're all independent in Ghana. Okay, so I must be talking about other African countries, because I'm told there has to be, okay, so that's a bad, but I do think in Hungary it'd be like the only church is in Budapest, right? And the other churches are like branches or fingers of it. So there may be certain governmental things that come into play in certain countries that cause there to be, maybe a home church really is legally responsible for what goes on in these other areas. So that could change what we've talked about. I'm not going to comment on it anymore. So that's just one little caution to everything we've said. But it's not that way in this country. Anybody can incorporate anything for any reason, more or less. Okay, now, here's the thing I want to talk about. And, we're going to start it. What I want to say is the following, is that maybe this won't bleed over, but I'm just going to go for it here because I don't want to just dismiss the class right now. Let me approach it this way. There's two questions we can think about. The first question is, would it be possible for a church to be affiliated, but the pastor not to be a Greater Grace affiliated pastor? Would that be possible? And then the other question, would it be possible for a church not to be affiliated, but for the pastor to be a Greater Grace pastor? Okay? Now, I would start off by saying that in keeping with everything we've talked about, Greater Grace World Outreach is not so interested in men having Greater Grace ordinations but not maintaining the relationship. Okay, if the relationship isn't there, who cares about the ordination? If you got this piece of paper and this is a credential to you, but you're not interested in being close to us, why would you do that? I mean, I can't imagine why you would want it. Do you need that credential so you can do what you want to do? It just doesn't make sense that a person would want to do that. It's like, it would be like me disowning my father but keeping the name. You know what I'm saying? If you really want to disown me, change your name, if you're really serious about it, So sort of the assumption here is when I'm talking about Greater Grace pastors, I'm talking about people that are like with us, for us, in contact, maintaining, want to be a part and want to continue. And it was something that was said years ago. I forget who said it, but it's like someone said that one of the reasons we hold conventions is just to see who shows up. You know what I'm saying? Like who really, when we go to some country and put on a convention, who is interested enough to bite the bullet and buy the train ticket and take the weekend to hang out with us, because it's just a very revealing thing about what this person is thinking about us and what revealing of the heart. So I would put it this way. I would say if we had a congregation out there and they were affiliated with us and the pastor they had left and they found another guy who wasn't a great pastor, but maybe some local guy, some guy in their town that they knew, and they invited him to come pastor them, I don't think that our stand would be, you're no longer Greater Grace. I don't think we would ever make that statement, in my opinion. But I would think that functionally, they would not be enjoying the benefits of affiliation because just that relationship probably wouldn't exist. Now, I suppose it's possible that the people in the church could stay in touch with us and be coming to convention, enjoying life, maintaining friendships, receiving material. But at best, it would sort of be a funny situation where the pastor's here and people are receiving from somewhere else, and that's really their lifeline. So I think it'd be possible. But I would say what you'd probably end up with is like an affiliation in name, but not in substance, okay? And then on the other side, if you had a church that was not a Greater Grace church, but they had a Greater Grace pastor, I would think the opposite, or whatever that thing would be, is that the church might not be affiliated in name, but would be affiliated in substance because they'd be receiving the teaching of Greater Grace World Outreach. Okay? Now this is just sort of like an interesting theoretical question we're asking, but I want us to be able to think of, and I'm not saying that, I think the formulation we've come to here is it might be difficult to impossible for a church to be affiliated and not have a Greater Grace pastor in the pulpit. Like, it probably just wouldn't happen very much. Go ahead, hand the mic to Mr. Castro, who I'm glad is here tonight.
I think Pastor Boyce is currently assisting or pastoring a Romanian church in England, in London. Right.
Yeah, and we've got, like I said, Brother Ben Tangy, who's been invited to pastor a church, and I think it could happen. I mean, if I were invited to come pastor a church that was not a Greater Grace church, I would take it from God and test the waters and see what happened, If they receive me, they receive Greater Grace. That's how I would look at it, because I'm not going to change,
One more thing, and I might know your answer, but if a pastor leaves our ministry, what happens then for his ordination?
Well, right now, while I'm talking, you can send the mic over to Wesley because I'm going to get his question. Right now, here's what's going on, is that to the best of my knowledge, there's in the vicinity of 500 people that have been ordained by Home Base. And we're going to get into this next week because I told you after we do affiliation, we'll do ordination. But in the pastors that are ordained by other churches are the Greater Grace churches. Like there's ordinations that go on in Budapest, that go on in Finland, that go on in Africa, that I don't know if Baku's ever ordained anybody. But where was I going with this train of thought? That we haven't done it yet, but we will be doing some sort of a recertification. Like if there's guys out there that are holding pieces of paper that we just have lost touch with, or that, we're going to contact these guys as best we can, and we're going to place those ordinations of guys that are not interested or that we can't find. We'll put them into some sort of suspended list or something like that. Just inactive, maybe inactive is a better word than suspended. Because we do have a little bit of concern about a guy, maybe he performs a marriage in some state that gets questioned and we get a call from some state trooper or something, we really do want to have a list of who we consider an active ordination and those that are inactive. So we haven't done that yet, but that is on the way. Okay? Yeah, good. Yeah.
I can testify to the fact that, like, when a church doesn't have a pastor that is not,
I know, it's hard to get right, I know.
when there is a pastor that is not affiliated and that congregation it's right that congregation doesn't have affiliation benefits, because that's part of the reason why my family came down here from Springfield.
Yeah.
And we followed Pastor Shibai because that church didn't want a Greater Grace pastor.
Right. It was no longer a Greater Grace church.
Yeah. And we were like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah. So,
bye.
Yeah, and what I'd encourage everybody is you might have a church that's a Greater Grace church in name, but is no longer that. I mean, that's when you're in a situation where you got to fend for yourself. You know what I'm saying? You got to make decisions for your own spiritual health and benefit and everything. So now we're going to kind of close with this, and I think I've got time to do it if I do it carefully here. Here's how it goes. If you're pastoring a church, you're a Greater Grace pastor, Greater Grace church somewhere, anywhere in the world, and you become disaffected with Greater Grace, like you no longer want a part of it, do not think that if you lead your church out of the affiliation that it will go well. Okay? It may not go well. And you may think that your people have more dependence on you and loyalty to you than they really have. And we've sort of seen this thing played out in a number of situations. And spiritually, take the name Greater Grace out of it. Take us out of it. But just when a pastor would lead his church, like this man has some sort of connection with people over, above him, whatever you want to call it, okay? When this man takes those people and leads him away from whatever that person or body is, he has just shown his people how to come out from under a covering. Okay, he just demonstrated for them coming out from a covering. Okay, so he does that, and the next thing that will happen is people just in his church, they just learned it's okay to come out from a covering, and they will do that same behavior. Okay, everybody understand that? When you lead your church out of affiliation, you've just taught your own people to leave you, and they will. Okay, and that's reason number one why it may not go the way you think it's going to go. When you're having problems with the affiliation, or they're saying bad things about you, or that accusation is coming to you, because that's part of the business. It just happens, And then the second thing is that you may find that your people are more attached to home base than you were aware. Like, you think that people are in your church because of you. They may be in your church because of Greater Grace. And the only reason they're putting up with you is because you are a Greater Grace pastor, and they know the covering that's behind you and the material, and the material they're getting from home base is balancing out your imbalanced message, and that is what's enabling them to continue in your ministry when you think that home base is causing you problems, or your affiliates are causing you problems, when they're the ones who is actually holding it together for you. Now again, if home base changes, I talked about that. There's a reason to separate, and if something starts going on here or whatever we start talking, changing our doctrine, okay, then you got to follow God and not the man that stopped following God. But this is just like maybe I've said what I what I had to say about it, but we've just seen this phenomenon over the years, and maybe I can't even, I'm not going to, certainly would not name a name because I'm not God, I don't know, but I've just watched it played out. People, they start to feel like the greater grace restraints, or whatever you want to call that, is like limiting them. And I think sometimes, this is my opinion, I'm not going to say this from the Bible, and Pastor Schaller might have a different and better opinion, but I think sometimes guys, and this is, remember how a few weeks ago somebody, maybe someone not here, maybe someone here asked me about, Bill Gates and Donald Trump, and I said, you can read their books, you can do everything they say to do, but unless God has given you that gift and made you that person, you're not going to get those results. And I think that, it'd be possible for someone to leave here and think, if I just follow Pastor Schaller's ministry, I'm going to get his results. Or if I follow Pastor Schiavelli, I'm going to get his results, And then you're out there for 5 years or whatever, and you got a church of 35 people or 50 people, and they can't pay you a salary, and it's just hard. It's a hard slog. And then you're attracted to another message that seems to be drawing a bigger following, And so, you know what? I think if I were to go that way with that group, and the famous one is, going with, like tongues, some manifestation type thing, or some healing ministry. If I go in that direction, that seems to be something that's attracting people, and I can draw people. So I'm gonna go that way because I'm not happy with the results I'm getting doing it the greater grace way. You know what I'm saying? So that, I think, sometimes can be and this is because what some men have said to me, not quite in that detail. So I'm going to lead my congregation out, and I'm just saying, just beware with that, guys. 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road, I'm out there, God gives me a church, and I start to think that maybe, I know a little more than Pastor Schaller does. I could probably name half a dozen guys that have gone this way, and they are no longer in the ministry, and their churches are devastated, and now we're still picking up the pieces of the people that were left behind with no pastor, some of whom are, divorces, shipwrecked lives, and others are just looking, oh, geez, I guess Greater Grace wasn't such a bad deal. Can you come help us, So, and again, I'm not, for the benefit of our international audience here, I'm not talking about Greater Grace. I'm talking about a spiritual principle that could apply to any affiliation, any group. Just again, for that's why voluntary accountability, principle, not the doctrine, but the principle of spiritual fathers, into affiliation, to have a church with a relationship with a denominational headquarters somewhere that's not a friendship, that's not a handshake, that's not a knitting together of hearts, that's not love, that's not voluntary humiliation and investment because of love. Who would even care about that? Why would I even do that? We are not interested in that. That is not the scriptural pattern. The scriptural pattern is the other one, the one we're talking about. Okay? So maybe we're going to knock this off tonight. God bless us as we go. 2 more Monday nights. And, yeah.